Me Ape.
Me other ape.
And today we here to find out, is Planet of Apes greatest movie ever made?
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Welcome to Greatest Movie Ever Made, show where apes watch movie and say if it's greatest movie ever made.
Ape good, man bad.
I'm David Scandura, joined as always by my co-host and damn dirty ape, Justice Burkett.
I like the subtle simplicity of that one. Just going with damn dirty ape on
Yeah.
this one. That was the right move. I didn't know what exactly you were gonna say, but you nailed it. Yeah, I'm glad we're not doing the whole podcast as apes.
Yeah.
Because while that bit was fun for a very brief amount of time, I think I would not have been able to sustain that over the course of the amount of time that we will be talking about this film.
It's a bit you really have to commit to.
Yeah, and I don't feel like committing to a bit right now because it's Saturday and I'm tired.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, other than it being the end of the week and me being tired. Sort of the normal thing, peaks and valleys, etc. But I'm feeling pretty good today. Feel like I had a pretty good week overall. I had been in a little bit of a slump where I was not going to the gym for a little over a week. So like 9 or 10 days there where I had workouts programmed, and just 0 of those 9 or 10 days I felt like going and doing that shit. So I just didn't go for like almost 2 weeks in a row. Which initially was like bumming me out and I was like getting really like frustrated about. And then I think I hit a point towards the end of that stretch where I was like, it's okay if I am not mentally or physically in a place where this feels like something that I would enjoy. I don't need to force myself to do it. I can just like, if my brain or body is telling me to take this break, I should just take this break. And then shortly after I kind of like hit that spot, which was like earlier this week, I then felt better and was up to going again. So I did go a couple times this week. So like that's been good to like get out of that little like rut, and also just to like come to peace with the fact that that rut is not something that I needed to be like ashamed about or beating myself up over.
Yeah, I've been there plenty of times.
yeah.
And I think like it can often be very easy to not want to go to the gym. But sometimes, like, if you don't want to go, still find an excuse to get out of the house and at least to go on a short walk. Like,
Yeah.
getting up and moving is always going to be beneficial to you.
Thankfully, I have 2 dogs, so
Yeah.
like getting out of the house and taking a walk once a day is not optional for me. It's mandatory because they need their exercise. Nora will go fucking insane. She'll run around the house and destroy things if she doesn't expend some of her energy. So it's like I have no other choice but to take them on a walk, which I think is very beneficial for me. Because yeah, even on those days when I didn't feel like getting out and like doing a whole workout, I at least got some sunshine and got moving a little bit. So, how are you?
I had a weird week.
Yeah.
Very tired, very exhausted of work. Definitely hit a wall a few points this week. I'm just having a lot of trouble focusing.
Yeah.
Yesterday was okay because it was Friday and I had a shorter work day. I had a lot of errands to help my mother with and running her around town. So that was a little chaotic. And watched the movie last night and then didn't get a lot of sleep and then woke up really early. So I just slept in all morning.
Oh, okay. That's probably the right move.
After that.
Yeah.
Gym's been okay. I'm switching to a new type of workout for this cycle, so we're doing more bodybuilding focused stuff.
Hell yeah, I've been doing that too, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't know about you.
I am too. I
Yeah.
haven't felt sore from a workout in
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, I had one of my days this week was a back day, and part of it was probably because I hadn't worked out in 10 days, but I think part of it was just the bodybuilding stuff hits your muscles differently than like just doing compound movements like you do in powerlifting training. And I was like, my upper back is like really wrecked from that, and like my biceps were sore. I was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, from just doing arms a
Mhm.
billion times,
Arm day.
and that's your workout. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
So that's been fun.
Nice to hear that you've been enjoying some bodybuilding stuff as well. That's fun that we're kind of in a similar spot. That
Yeah.
both of our coaches are having us do that.
He asked me what I wanted to do, and I love powerlifting. I love doing those 3 lifts, but
Yeah.
I wanted something different. And I'm still not quite at a point where I'm comfortable with doing strongman movements.
Yeah.
And
I think you would severely fuck with it though if you eventually do get there.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I just need to get to a spot where I'm a little bit more comfortable with my weight and bending down and picking stuff up and all that crazy shit.
Fair.
But we got a bunch of fancy new bodybuilding equipment at the gym.
Yep.
That I haven't had the chance to really try out yet. So I was like, let's do that. Let's try that. Let's go that route for a little while. So it's been fun. But my arms are fucking so sore right now.
So sore and tired, but not bad is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
All right.
Any media that you want to recommend?
Yeah, I had a few things. I'm gonna blast through these pretty quick and not like do a whole fucking essay on each of these picks because I have a few things to recommend. But I did watch a shocker, audience.
A found footage horror movie?
I watched a found footage horror movie.
Say it ain't so.
Technically.
Sorry.
No, you're honestly, I deserve it. You're correct to do so because all I watch other than movies for this podcast is apparently found footage movies. Technically it's a mockumentary, but I think mockumentary I think fits into the found footage kind of in my camp. If it's a horror mockumentary, you can call it a found footage horror movie. Called Ghost Watch.
I've heard of this.
Yes, aired on BBC One in the UK, and it was like the Orson Welles War of the Worlds thing where people thought it was real.
Oh, that's
and
sick.
like freaked the fuck out and they like scared a ton of people. So I had heard about this thing. I watched it. Way better than I expected. Ghost Watch fucking rocks so hard. And if you are a fan of Paranormal Activity, Lake Mungo, any Blair Witch, any of the famous found footage horror movies, if you're a fan of any of those, like Ghost Watch is going to be probably something that you fuck with.
Okay. And I heard a lot of people bring it up in comparison to Late Night with the Devil, which came out earlier this year.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Late Night with the Devil yet.
Yeah.
But I've seen the trailers for it and kind of know the format. And yes, 1,000%.
Yeah.
From someone who hasn't seen Late Night with the Devil, it definitely seems like that was maybe a influence or an homage that they were doing in Late Night with the Devil is like callbacks to Ghost Watch. Because it feels very similar.
I really liked the idea of Late Night with the Devil, but so it's nice to know that there's something else out there.
Yeah.
With a similar concept.
Yeah, and it is. I compared it to Lake Mungo, number one, because it's a mockumentary, but number two, because I think Lake Mungo, you benefit enormously from watching that movie very, very carefully and closely. Same thing with Ghost Watch, where if you're casually watching it, you might miss a lot of the scares because they're very just subtle and in the background. But if you're like really paying attention to this thing, it's like eerie as fuck. It's really good. So that was one media recommendation. I've also been listening to a lot of hardcore. I'm in a hardcore phase right now, where just like apparently I just want fast, aggressive punk music. And so I have a few albums to recommend. Because they're hardcore albums, they're all under 40 minutes long. One is Diaspora Problems by Soulglow. That's a fucking amazing album. It kind of fuses some hip-hop stuff with the hardcore. There's like a death metal breakdown on one of the songs. Like they experiment a little bit with genre, and it's good. Concrete Cowboys by the band Buggin'. Highly recommend. Just fast, aggro, hardcore. And then A New Tomorrow by the band Zulu, which kind of like the Soulglow album is like very experimental. They experiment with some soul, some funk, some hip hop there as well.
I think I've heard a little bit of that Zulu record.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah.
So big recommend on all three of those hardcore albums. I've also been listening to a couple other bands, Gel, Scowl. Those are both also great. So yeah, if you like me are in the mood to listen to some hardcore, those are some ideas of where to start. Do you have any media recommendations?
Yes. We are in the midst of an epic battle of kaiju-like proportions between two of the biggest names in hip-hop right now.
Yeah.
Between
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar and Drake.
Yes, two of the biggest names in hip-hop. I wouldn't necessarily say two of the biggest talents in hip-hop. I would say one of the
them
biggest
is-
talents in hip-hop, and then also Drake.
So that's been I've sort of been following that this week because it's hard not to with just them dropping multiple diss tracks. But in all of this, I don't want there was another notable hip hop release this week that I don't want to get lost in the shuffle from another titan of the genre. and that's Dracula Flow 5
Okay.
from YouTube. It is 20 minutes of Dracula Flow in comparison to the all Dracula Flows 1 through 4, which combined total 17 minutes.
I'm not familiar with Dracula Flow. Is he rapping in character as Dracula? Is that what the thing is?
Yes. Maybe we'll have to have 40 minutes of Dracula Flow after this episode tonight.
If this episode's runtime is 3 hours long, it's because we put in all of Dracula Flow
I
at
think
the end.
so I think it's a record. It's from a record label that I think is run by Joe G, and he's starting to do internet memes and stuff again.
Yeah.
And there is not a bar on either of the the diss tracks released by Kendrick or Drake. There's not a single bar that could come close to the worst Dracula Flow bar.
Okay, all right.
I'll hit you with a couple from Dracula
Hit me.
Flow
I gotta hear
5. The za got me shitting like the henny got me shitting. Shitception. Some of you have never heated up a banana peel in the microwave for 8 seconds to replicate the warmth of a vagina, and it shows. I come from nothing. 58% THC pre-rolled joints rolled in keef had me reading the Book of Revelations. We are indeed close. That's my media recommendation. Go on YouTube and watch Dracula Flow 5.
Hell yeah.
It's the greatest fucking thing ever.
The Book of Revelation one got me. Yeah, so we should probably talk about Planet of the Apes now.
Ape. Yeah.
Together strong.
Apes together strong.
They don't say that in this movie.
Nope, that's in the new ones.
Yeah.
What's your history with this?
So Planet of the Apes, this film specifically, I saw a couple times when I was a kid because my parents had it on like VHS.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if it was like an actual VHS or if they like recorded it when it was on TV one time. Because that was the case with some of our movies when I was a kid, where they would like record movies that aired on TV, and then we would just fast forward through the commercials when we were rewatching them.
I think my parents still have some of those VHSs.
Oh, my parents 1000% do. Like they still have a whole VHS wall in the hallway that when I go home, I'm like, there's all the movies I watched as a kid. But we had this one on VHS again. Don't know if it was the recorded off TV situation or a real one. And I saw it a couple times probably. It wasn't like a huge heavy rotation watch. Probably hadn't seen this thing in like at least 15 years, probably longer. And was excited to go back to it. So my history with Planet of the Apes 1968, which we're talking about today, is like not super long or storied. It's just a movie I had seen a couple times and thought was okay when I was a kid, right? And didn't really have a strong memory of. The Planet of the Apes series, weirdly, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which is the second one.
I thought about watching that one last night.
It had a bigger impression on me when I watched it as a kid. I also probably saw it a similar number of times, but it just stuck in my brain way more.
Yeah.
Because it was like 8 to 10 when I probably saw it for the first time. And that is very much a movie that would stick in the brain of an 8 to 10 year
Yeah,
old.
Beneath is fucking insane.
It's crazy. There's like a cult that worships atomic bombs and they wear fake skin that they take off and then they're just muscle people underneath.
It's a Fallout 3 side quest extended into a movie.
It's bananas. So that one I like weirdly remembered more than the first one. And then I've seen of the new ones. I saw the Burton one once. I barely remember it. Like honestly, if you ask me to tell you one thing that happens in that movie, I would say other than the fucking Lincoln Memorial ape thing, I don't remember shit from that movie. And then the new ones I've only seen the first one, Rise, right? The one with Franco.
Yes, that's the first one.
That's the only one I've seen. I remember enjoying it. I remember hearing the other ones were good. Yeah, so I know that you're a much bigger Apes fan, at least of the new ones.
Yeah, I fucking love the new ones.
Yeah, so talk about your relationship with this franchise and with this movie.
Yeah, I started with the new ones, with Rise, Dawn, and War.
So you hadn't seen the Heston one?
No, aside from maybe catching parts of it on TV.
Okay.
Like I was always aware of it. I knew the twist. You know, it's kind of hard to avoid that. And I may have seen the Tim Burton one at again my friend Sam's house at his tree house in the middle of the night.
When it was 109 degrees in the Phoenix summer.
Yeah.
Just watching the worst movie ever made.
Yeah. But I know that one is shown on TV a bunch too.
Mm.
I actually watched that. I did a whole ape marathon where I got all 5 original Planet of the Apes films on DVD for $5 at Big Lots. Big recommendation for DVD shopping, Blu-ray shopping. Big Lots. Their prices have gone up, but back in the day, you could get a season of TV show for $5 there.
Hell yeah.
And I've bought a lot of movies from them. But that's how I got the Apes movies, and I watched through all of them, and all of them are good. There's not a Planet of the Apes movie that I dislike, aside from the Burton one. And the Burton one does suck shit, but it also has some of the most insane makeup effects I've ever seen on film.
I do remember that. I do remember being very impressed by the ape facial prosthetics that they used. Yeah.
And the production design in general.
Well, I mean,
the Ape City.
It's still Tim Burton.
It's still great. Yeah.
You know, the production design's never going to be bad. Even when his movies are bad, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I guess is his, and fucking Alice in Wonderland. Like, those movies are awful, but you can't really besmirch the production design.
Yeah, another big problem with that one is Mark Wahlberg just farting around that fucking thing, sucking all the life out of it.
Hey, bro, you seen these apes? Or is he an ape?
No, he's just dude. He's a guy. Imagine trying to get Mark Wahlberg into makeup.
Hey, bro, this is a talking ape. You see this shit?
What the fuck on this fucking Planet of the Apes?
I'm gonna fucking commit a hate crime against this ape. I'm gonna beat his ape ass.
And the new ones, I rewatched the new ones, and the new ones still fucking rule, especially Dawn and War.
You try that shit in Southie, ape, you're gonna catch these hands. Anyway, sorry.
But I've only watched them recently. I've only watched the whole series recently. So this is my second go around with the original from '68, directed by Franklin Schaffner. I don't know. Starring good old Charlie Heston.
Yep. Charlton Heston, a man who, a Hollywood icon, a legend.
Yeah.
A guy who was very politically active. He made use of his celebrity to stand for political causes he believed in, which in some cases were the civil rights movement of the 1960s. He would have been involved with that right around when this movie was made. That's good. We like that, Charlie. Great job. Later in his life, just pretty much the poster boy of the National Rifle Association.
Yep. At the beginning of the movie, when he's recording his little
captain's log,
into the ship, and he's like, "I leave the 20th century with no regrets." And I'm like, "You sure about that, Chuck? There's not a couple things you could have done differently."
Because Columbine does sneak right in under the wire of the 20th century, and I feel like you, as the NRA's spokesman, do have a little bit of children's blood on your hands.
Well, and he was in Burton's remake.
Oh, sorry.
For 2 seconds.
I must interrupt you.
Yeah.
Because the Podmaster has texted me some very important trivia, which is that Charlton Heston NRA speech, the famous one where he delivered the "from my cold dead hands," which is now on every fucking bumper sticker of the worst people in the entire country. That was apparently about 1 week post Columbine, which I did not know. So. In Denver?
Jesus Christ!
Holy shit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to have to cut you saying that out of the podcast. The Podmaster just elaborated even further on that. And man, Charlton Heston's NRA speech after Columbine, even worse than it sounds. Anyway, an interesting guy. Great in this movie. Really, really good in this movie.
I'm a little mixed on him.
You're mixed on him, okay.
And I think we'll talk about that, because I have thoughts.
Yeah.
I have thoughts.
We'll touch on it.
Yeah. So, movie starts in space, the final frontier.
Yes. And yes, Charlton Heston is delivering captain's log as if he is Captain Picard, but unlike Captain Picard, this guy is 1,000% American. This is the most American man who's ever lived. I love him fucking philosophizing into his little captain's log. And then lighting up a huge stogie in space.
One last stogie before the long nap.
And then, so he's like looking all at the crew in their cryopods. There's 5 of them. There's him and then, there's 4 of them.
Yeah.
4 of them, rather. Him and 3 other people. There's like a lady. There's Dodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the lady's name because she dies immediately.
I think it's like Stewart. Lady who is expressly on this mission for them to fuck.
Apparently for them to triple team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we sent 1 lady into space and then 3 dudes because that's how many holes she has, I guess. Is the thinking. It is crazy when Heston reveals that they're all just supposed to fuck her and create offspring.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not really comfortable with how this astronaut mission was set up. Anyway, so he's like looking at all the 3 of them in their little pods as they're snoozing, and he fucking takes this cigar and puts a lit cigar. He does not stub it out. Puts a lit cigar in the pocket of his spacesuit, which is maybe the most insane thing to ever happen in the first 3 minutes of a movie we've covered on this podcast. I can't think of a crazier thing that's happened immediately at the start of a movie than a man putting a lit cigar in his shirt pocket. It's nuts. And then he goes to bed in his little cryo chamber.
This looks far less comfortable than the hypersleep chambers in Alien.
Oh yeah.
This is a sarcophagus.
Yes. Yeah. These are glass sarcophagi. Yeah.
To the point where he basically does like the mummy pose of crossing his arms.
Which is appropriate because when they wake up, Stewart is a mummy.
Yeah.
There is a mummy in one of those sarcophagus pods. She has been mummified. I know Charlton Heston's pod must smell so strongly of cigar smoke too, because that cigar wasn't out and it's just in his pocket. So now he's in like a confined, like airtight, and we know it's airtight because the thing that kills Stewart is an air leak.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when he gets out of there, just the musty, stale cigar smoke, which is how he must smell for the remainder of this movie. Because I don't think those apes ever let him shower. They spray him with a hose, I guess.
spray him with a hose.
But for most of this movie, he just must reek like very stale cigar smoke. Which I imagine is how Charlton Heston smelled in real life.
Yeah, sure. That and gunpowder and probably cheap whiskey.
The blood of children. Anyway. So yeah, they all go to sleep, and before the crash happens and Stewart turns into a mummy, we get a title sequence, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, I like it.
I think it's a good ass title sequence. Good score over this title sequence and throughout the movie by Jerry Goldsmith, who kind of fucking popped off with this thing.
Yeah, I was a little unsure of it at first because in the beginning it's very discordant and random, and it's like
I like that.
Lots of like random things happening all at once.
It feels really like thrillery and tense because of that, and I really enjoyed it.
And I think as the score goes on, it coalesces into something more closely resembling music, which I thought was kind of an interesting progression. Like while we're out in space and things are mysterious and they're walking on the planet for the first time, everything's very tense and strange and off the wall. And then when we get to Ape City, it seems like the score becomes a little bit more traditional.
Yeah. Have you heard the rumor that Jerry Goldsmith, in order to get more in the mindset of the apes, wore an ape mask while he was writing this score? Have you heard that?
I think I've seen a picture of it.
Wait, you have?
I'm not sure.
I gotta Google and see if there's a picture of it. I'm not gonna do it right now, but I will have to see if I can find a picture of Jerry Goldsmith.
We can pause her
composing while wearing an ape mask.
For some reason, that just flashed into my mind.
Yeah, I would love to see it if it exists. I love the idea that he was like, you know what will help me compose the score for this ape?
There is 100% a picture of...
Show me the picture. I gotta see the picture.
It's not Jerry Goldsmith writing the score. It's him conducting the orchestra.
We will be posting that to social when we release this episode. Because it is as delightful as you would expect a conductor wearing an ape mask to be. That fucking rocks. Anyway, I think this is a great score.
Yeah.
And I think it's, like you said, kind of very interesting how it sort of builds upon itself and kind of comes to its own like an hour into the movie. But it like takes its time. It's a little patient. Like this movie is kind of patient through the first act.
Yeah, and adds a lot of intensity to the scenes in this movie.
Yes.
Um,
So anyway, the title sequence is cool. The score is good. And then the spaceship crashes.
we crash in Lake Powell.
Yes, into Lake Powell. Yes. Lake Powell and Glen Canyon featured very prominently in this film, and I was like, I love to see it. I forgot, because it's been a really long time since I saw this movie, I forgot how much of this movie is shot in northern Arizona and southern Utah. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been all these places. I was actually in a Westworld shoot at Lake Powell. But it doesn't look like it does in this movie from 1968 because of climate change. The water level is much lower now. Because we're killing the planet and we're all going to die.
And I'm sure Lake Powell was much more remote at this time, so
Yeah.
you could shoot with a space capsule in the middle of a lake and not worry about someone jet skiing by.
Right. a fucking boat of fraternity brothers waggling their dicks at the camera or whatever. Yeah, so they crash. I like the way they do this crash. I like a lot of the cinematography in this movie.
Mhm.
I think a lot of it's really good. But I like the way they do the crash is basically it's just POV from the spaceship where it's like flipping up and down, upside down, and like flying all over the place, and then it eventually like kind of hits the water, and they don't show the spaceship. It's just like what you would see if you were looking through the windshield of the spaceship.
Mhm.
And it's like both a low budget option that has held up enormously well, way better than like whatever spaceship they could conjure in 1968 when this movie was released. But also like it feels very like visceral, and it really puts you in the kind of frenetic like movement of the crash. And it like gets you kind of tense immediately, which I thought it was really good.
Right.
I like that they did it this way.
And the actual set that they have sticking out of the water looks very small, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like just a capsule or it's just the nose
I think it's just the
of the
tip.
ship. And okay.
Yeah.
It's just the tip.
I think it's just the tip.
Just the tip.
The rest of it's under the water.
Right.
And that's just the tip.
Yeah. Either way, it's effective at either implying that there's more under the water
Yeah.
or it's just a capsule. And I do love the screech noise that they play when they realize that Lady is dead and has become a Romero zombie.
Stewart is a mummy. Yes. Yes. I love that effect. I love the fucking mummy dummy. It's great. And I also like the dramatic horror movie screech effect.
So the capsule floods and sinks, and they get onto a life raft.
Yeah.
And this is Charlton Heston playing Taylor.
Yeah.
And then Landon and
Dodge. Yeah.
are the other two.
Yes. Landon, his sort of vibe is that he's a little bit he's the most like disturbed of the three of them by this crash landing on an unknown planet. Like Charlton Heston basically starts telling them like the computer said that we're 300 light years off course, and also it's been 2,000 years since we left, or 3,000 years, something like that.
It's 2,000 years. Yeah,
2,000 years since
they're
they
close
left
to the year 4000.
Right.
And Heston, it takes a while for Heston to let that out.
Yeah.
The guy playing Landon, whose name I didn't write down, he's just doing a type of acting that doesn't exist anymore, where he just sounds like a 50s radio announcer, just a
See?
not quite, but he's just like, you don't really know where we are or when we are,
Yeah.
kind of. I just like
Yeah.
really kind of thrown for a loop. Also, wicked fake beard on this guy.
Yes. So
Same
of
with
the-
Heston.
Of the fake beards in this movie, I think Landon's looks the worst. I think by a country mile, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they even call it out at one point where like Heston is Heston's character Taylor is constantly belittling and ridiculing Landon for apparently no reason.
Yeah,
he's just like, hey, you fucking bitch, your beard's going gray, you stupid piece of shit. What do
everyone
think
you
about
know on Earth is dead, you fucking asshole. Live with it. We got a survival kit for 3 days.
It's so fucking nuts because they take the little raft, they start walking through the desert, and Landon is like a little upset about being stranded on an alien planet. And Heston is like, hey, your statue on Earth probably has fucking corroded and nobody can read your nameplate, you stupid bitch. And I'm like, where is this hostility coming from? I would love to know more about these relationships between these two guys before they got in those cryosleep pods. Like, is there a reason that he's being such a dick?
I don't know. So here's my thing with Heston, and we'll talk about this more as it comes up later in the movie. Taylor's kind of an asshole.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think he's the hero of, he thinks he's Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
But he doesn't realize what movie he's in.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that is intentional on Heston's part, or if that's just Charlton Heston doing the Charlton Heston thing and being the hero that he's been in so many other movies.
I kind of feel like maybe it's the latter, and maybe it's an intentional decision by the filmmakers to cast Heston, who they know is going to read that way, as like the square-jawed all-American hero.
Yeah.
In a movie that is deeply cynical and incredibly dark. Because I think casting Heston and having him just give his Heston performance in this movie makes this movie's kind of cynical mean streak work all the better, because the guy at the center of it is kind of playing just the blue-eyed all-American boy, you know? And he's not clued into the kind of mean attitude that this movie has, which I think makes it work better, because it's like the joke is really on Taylor, both in the movie the joke is on Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by having Heston play this as kind of a normal, straightforward sci-fi hero performance, like, it makes the joke being on him at the end kind of land all the harder, because he hasn't been playing it as if he knows that this is a movie that's going to end that way, you know?
Yeah. So this was written by Rod Serling.
The great Rod Serling.
Yes, I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan.
Yes, we both are Twilight Zone fans.
That's
here.
cool. I didn't know that.
I also love the Twilight Zone.
I think
I just love Rod Serling as a man.
Yeah.
Like, just learning about his life, how he was like so staunchly opposed to McCarthyism, how he would chain smoke cigarettes fucking every waking moment of his life. Just everything about that guy, I'm like, really cool motherfucker.
You're a big fan of guys who smoke a lot.
Yeah, it's true. It's because I may potentially, mother, if you're listening to this, apologies, have been a smoker before and miss it. But I don't anymore, unfortunately. But also fortunately for my lungs and the amount of years that I will live on this planet.
Smoking is awesome, and if it wasn't so bad for you, I would probably do it.
Yeah, there was a time when I was like, even though this is bad for me, I will continue to do it. And then I stopped being 22, and I was like, no, actually, I think I would like to not be dead soon. I would like to be alive for a long time, so I should probably cut this shit out.
I had a roommate who smoked, and we can cut this out too. I had a roommate who smoked, and I was smoking then, because it would be really easy to just like, okay, we're going to sit on the back porch and talk about our day and drink beer, and she's going to smoke, and I guess I'll have one too.
Yeah.
But so I've had them casually and had them when drinking, but I've never bought a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, I was doing the pack a day thing for a little bit, but
although they did give me my parents did give me those candy cigarettes, and I should still thinking about it. Still thinking.
Yeah, as I recall, it was your New Year's resolution to start smoking, so you have about 8 more months.
So good on that
to get it. To get it going. Anyway.
So this was partially written by Rod Serling, adapted from a novel by Pierre Boulle. And this feels like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yes, this is 100% a 2-hour long Twilight Zone episode.
And I mean that as positively as I can.
Yes, me too. Me too. It's a good thing about this movie that it feels like a very long Twilight Zone episode. Yeah.
So I think casting Heston was part of a move by the filmmakers to like put some pedigree behind this thing back at a time when science fiction wasn't as marketable as it is today, or it wasn't as popular as it was. We're pre-Star Wars and everything. Maybe even pre-2001 at this point.
I think this came out the same year. Was 2001 68?
2001 was either 68 or 69, I think.
Yeah.
So this came out the same year as 2001, and science fiction hadn't really had the kind of critical love that it does these days, and the studio wasn't really sure about this movie. So I think, first of all, bringing on Heston and getting the makeup right was a big thing in getting this movie made. And part of their idea was like, we have to put great actors in the makeup.
Yeah.
So I think that Twilight Zone, the satire and the cynicism of Twilight Zone is running through this whole movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's what informs the Taylor character.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, I love the moment, by the way, where Landon is planting his little tiny American flag in the dirt. And it is crazy that this movie came out before the moon landing. Like this, because it's like they knew that this is what we were going to do when we finally did actually get to some space rock that we could put a flag in. They were just like, oh yeah, this is what, oh, it's ours now. We put our little thing on it. And I love Taylor just fucking laughing his ass off at it. And the camera on him when he does that, it's like a little scary. Like it's a little like unsettling.
It's the most disturbing moment in this movie.
Yes. And it rocks.
Yeah.
Really hard.
I'm not sure how we're supposed to read it, but I'm like, it is.
I definitely read it as basically like, this is a Cold War era film. Right?
Yeah.
And so Landon putting his little flag in the fucking ground is, I think, a commentary on sort of like the space race, right? Which was going on at the time. We were going to go to the moon the next year. And so the American public was very aware that this was like a thing that was happening. We got to beat Russia to the moon. And so I think it's a little bit of a commentary on that. And I think Taylor's laughing is basically like, you don't even understand the situation we're in. Like, we're fucked. Like, it doesn't matter if you put our little flag here. We have 3 days of food and we are about to die 300 light years from Earth, and no one will ever know what happened to us.
Also,
I think what that laugh is about.
3-day survival kit, that someone should have rethought that.
Yeah, maybe there were more supplies like in the ship. Like maybe they could have lived longer if it hadn't landed in water and been sinking. But 3 days is what they end up with, I guess.
Yeah.
That's like just the emergency, like, okay, like last resort, like fucking we'll give you it. And I like that they also in the emergency pack, in addition to 3 days of food, they do have a pistol with 12 rounds of ammo. And I'm like, that's a suicide pistol. That is definitely what that's for. Because it's like, yeah, if you fucking land on an alien planet and you only have 3 days of food, and it's like your ship is irretrievable and you can't like get back up into outer space, let's put a gun in one of those backpacks so these guys can end their own lives humanely.
You can you hunt for as long as you can until you're down to 3 bullets.
Yeah, unless there's no life on the planet, in which case it's like, might as well just do it right away.
Yeah. I do want to talk about just gorgeous photography in this opening portion of the movie of them trekking through the landscape, the gorgeous northern Arizona landscape.
Yes, this is my favorite part of the movie, is before the apes show up, when these 3 guys are lost on what they think is an alien planet and are just marching through desolate desert landscapes.
And what probably read to a 1968 audience as an alien planet.
Yes.
But to me,
it's just Arizona.
It's just Arizona.
It's literally like a 2-hour drive away from where we live.
Yeah. I could just go hiking there.
Yeah.
But
I have. It's very nice.
I think so too. I think it might be my favorite part of the movie. Not that this movie doesn't necessarily have great moments throughout it,
Yeah.
but this just works really well.
Yeah.
And the performances, particularly Heston, who's just playing up this whole asshole Taylor thing, is really good in this part.
Just fucking needling Landon the whole time.
Yeah, and just the imagery of.
I bet you were the fucking captain of your football team. Look at you now, lost in space, you stupid bitch. You're gonna die, and everybody you know has already been dead for 2,000 years.
I bet you kissed your wife goodbye and told her you'd be back soon, but she got dicked down by the mailman, and now she's been dead for 2,000 years, you stupid motherfucker.
That's why I don't have a wife. I just left a huge body count in my wake and pieced out up into space, which is the thing we find out later. is that Taylor has fucked a ton and apparently never been in a committed relationship. Because he says lots of love making, but no love to Nova. And I'm like, all right, I know what that means. It means you were playing the field. Anyway.
Yeah, so they come across a shrubbery.
A shrubbery.
Sorry.
No. Never apologize for referencing the Knights Who Say Knee.
They discover the planet has life. And there's a really ominous sequence where they see these scarecrows hanging up on the cliffs, but they follow the greenery to a waterfall, and we get to see some butts in this G-rated movie.
There's hella buns, hella exclusively male buns in this G-rated film. You see all three of these men's asses, and I think if maybe you paused and went frame by frame and zoomed in a little bit, you might see some of their dicks too.
There's one scene where I think Heston gets out of the water and he starts running.
Yeah.
And the camera very carefully tracks him through the shrubs to, I think, hide his dick. He does like a zigzag. I think they placed these bushes specifically so that the path that Heston had to run would cover up his
Don't
cock.
let them see my cock and balls. You'll have to bump this up to an NC-17.
Yeah.
If you get my cannon in the shot, they'll never let this thing see the light of day.
You'll take my cock and balls when you pry it from my cold dead hands. I also like that their first instinct to land.
Which, by the way, they do later try to take his balls. But
they do.
We will get there. Anyway.
A lot of dark stuff in this G-rated film.
I forgot that was a plot point in this movie where they were like, we're going to geld him. And I was like, I totally just completely forgot that a major movement of this film is Charlton Heston attempting to escape so that they don't cut off his nuts.
Mommy, what does geld mean? Don't worry about it, little Timmy. Just watch the Ape movie.
You'll understand when you're old. Hey, you know the family dog? He can't have babies. That's what it means. Anyway.
I also like that their first instinct is to go skinny dipping.
Yes, yeah. And so while they're doing this, little hands are grabbing their clothes. We don't actually see like full bodies or faces initially.
And we have seen figures following them across the landscape too.
There is a shot where they're like walking through that canyon, and there's like the figures at the top of the canyon kind of like skulking. That did remind me a lot of Dune. I was like, oh yeah, that's Dune kind of does this. But yeah, so like these figures are snatching up their clothes as they're skinny dipping, and they like get out of the water, and because they see this happening, like they notice, and they like run after to like try and get their shit back. They also like steal all their packs and like equipment and everything, and they kind of just leave a trail of like torn clothing and wrecked shit. So they're like, well, now all of our shit is like fucked up. And then they like they chase them all the way to this like clearing where there's like a field. It's like a cornfield. And they see that these are apparently human people. They just look like humans.
Yeah, primitive men that they assume are mute, and of course they are.
Yeah.
And I like that Taylor's first instinct is we could be kings here.
Yeah.
Let's conquer these fucking people.
Let's be the emperors of this planet, boys. Which, based on the fact that there are 3 of them, right, is Dodge, Landon, and Taylor. It's like if there were no apes and this was just a movie where the 3 of them became the overlords of this planet, I give it 10 years max before the part of the planet that Taylor runs declares war on the other 2.
Yeah. Taylor also picks out the one that he wants to fuck.
Yes.
He immediately is like, oh, one of them's hot.
Yeah. It's very funny because there's like other women in the group of humans, but you literally only get close-ups of Nova because it's like from Taylor's perspective, so it's like hachi machi.
I would have checked it to see if Stuart was still warm, but the capsule sank. I haven't had my rocks off in 2,000 years.
I really should have jerked off before I went into that cryo chamber. I've been blue-balled for 2,000 years.
Captain's log. I wonder if man still makes war with his neighbor. Anyway, gotta go crank one out.
You just hear it on the recording. Anyway, so yeah, they're thinking about approaching these people, but before they get a chance, a bunch of monkeys on horses with guns show up. This sequence rocks.
Yes, this is one of my other favorite parts of this movie.
Yeah, this sequence is really good. I love the introduction of the apes. I love that there's like the fucking sticks that they're using in the cornfield to like drive the humans away. And I love that like they get the humans running and basically immediately just start culling the herd, right? Because they're planning on capturing some of them, but there's just too many humans, so they just like let out a volley of rifle fire once they get the humans running away and scattering, just to like have fewer to deal with. And I'm like, that's brutal. And this is a G-rated movie, but this movie is very dark and very brutal at times.
Yes.
And I really enjoy this whole sequence.
Yeah, I like when they start it seems like they intentionally start herding them to this cliff edge, and then they have other apes at the bottom of the cliff to just collect the ones that they knock over the cliff edge, because humans are basically cattle in this movie, and they're dumb and they're stupid, and they can be easily controlled.
And they're catching a bunch of them in like nets and stuff. There's a really good shot in this sequence that I wanted to call out, where like Dodge is running. And because all 3 of the guys, they kind of get separated, and they're also not in their astronaut uniforms because those all got torn up, so they're kind of in like loincloths and they just look like the other humans. So Dodge is like running away, and there's a great shot where he like gets caught in a net and then he like falls out of the net. He like doesn't fully get scooped up in it, and then he stands up and starts running, and then he gets shot in like the back of the head and falls down. And in the same shot, the camera then like pans over to a different part of the cornfield. Heston like emerges from the corn and then runs and trips over Dodge's dead body, all in the same shot. And I was like, that was really well choreographed. It's really good shit. Good movie making, and that is one specific moment that I wanted to call out. Also, R.I.P. Dodge. He did not deserve that.
R.I.P. Dodge. Heston also gets shot in the throat, which apparently is not lethal.
Well, I think he might have been like
grazed or something. I don't know.
Just went through the tube that allows him to talk, but none of the major arteries, I guess.
And a lot of the imagery of the apes, gathering up the humans that they've collected, is really effective and disturbing. There's a shot of humans hanging by their ankles on this like rack, and then photos. The apes are taking photos of them of themselves next to like a pile of dead humans.
Yeah, I think in addition to this movie being a Cold War space race movie, it's also a Vietnam movie, and that felt very pointed in this sequence with some of these visuals. I
want to be very careful about how I approach this. And we don't have to dwell on it due to the colors of our skin and not being the authorities to talk about this.
Yeah,
I think this movie's kind of a white slavery movie.
Yeah,
I think this movie is the what's the most horrible thing that can happen to a white man is to have the the experience that his race has
Inflicted
on
yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this imagery is reminiscent of that kind of part of our history.
I do agree with you, and I think that really shows up in this movie for me in the trial scenes, the court scenes, where he's sort of like he's on ape trial, right? And they're basically being like, oh, like, you know, you're like dumb and unintelligent, and they're basically like, you have like subhuman intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cornelius and Zira are like, well, if that's the case, like, why is he even on trial, right? And they're like, well, because he is, right? And,
yeah.
And so like that, I feel like is historically not too different from how the legal system in this country has treated certain folks. You know, is basically like, we have no respect for you. This whole trial is a farce. We have a foregone conclusion. We have already decided to punish you, and we're parading you around in front of this courtroom full of people as like a procedural matter, even though we don't think that you actually deserve justice, basically.
Yeah.
Like, we've already decided what justice is for you because we think you're inferior. So I do agree with you. I think that like, definitely for me was also showing up in those parts of the movie.
I don't know if an audience at the height of the civil rights movement in 1968 would see the movie from that perspective, or if they would just see Taylor as the unimpeachable all-American hero. But watching it in our current era, I definitely get the sense of the worst, the idea this time is the worst thing that could happen to a white man is for him to be put in the position of a minority.
Yeah.
The way that we have treated minorities in the past.
Yeah.
And even later in the movie when Taylor still has this like superiority complex, it's like, we're men and we're better than you, and we were until he has the rude awakening at the end of what really happened to mankind.
Yep.
Which, spoilers alert if you don't know about that.
Yeah, everybody knows the end of this
movie. But yeah, a lot of the imagery in this part of the movie is really effective. I think also Goldsmith's score is doing a lot of heavy lifting here too.
Yep. I love that the first reveal to Taylor and to us, the audience, that these apes can speak and speak English is there's like a couple of these like gorillas posing with a pile of human corpses. And the photographer gorilla just goes, "Smile."
Yeah, I think that's the first line.
It is the first line of ape dialogue.
Okay, yeah.
It's the first thing that you hear one of them say. And I'm like, that rocks that's the reveal that they can speak. Because it's like, so it reminds me of like fucking, you know, those photos that came out from like Guantanamo Bay, you know, of people being, you know, soldiers posing with like people who had been tortured.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, it's so chilling, and it's very effective.
Abu Ghraib or images of the Holocaust, stuff like that.
And Vietnam again.
In Vietnam.
Yeah.
Very, very potent and dark G-rated film.
Yes. Anyway, so then they take him to Ape Town, to
Ape City.
Apeville. The design of Ape City rocks. I think it looks very good. I like how it kind of has like this like cliff dweller, like Pueblo thing going on.
Yeah, that's what they were inspired by.
Yeah. It's really neat. I really like it. I like that this is an actual tactile physical location, and not like a map painting or anything. It's like got like depth to it. It looks really great. Loved it. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Taylor is thrown into a cage, and we meet Zira, played by Kim Hunter, who is so the way that this society is structured is the gorillas are the military enforcement, the police, kind of. The orangutans are the nobles and the religious order.
Yeah,
the religious and political order.
Yeah. They're basically just, they run everything.
Yeah.
They run the church and the government.
And the chimpanzees are the scientists and the reascherers.
Yes, and in Cornelius's case, the cucks.
Yes.
He's such a grade A little cuck in this movie. his fiance is making eyes at this human, and he's just like, okay, like, I guess I'll help out with the research. And I'm like, man, you do not need to continue being in this relationship if you're uncomfortable. You can just leave, Cornelius. It's fine. I think she's in love with that human. She named him Bright Eyes, which, by the way, there is nothing as easy as lucky or free. Every single fucking time she called him Bright Eyes.
This is the first day on the planet of the apes. I'm wide awake. It's morning on the planet of the apes.
I'm wide awake. That was very bad. Yeah, no, every time she calls him Bright Eyes, I was just like, first of all, is that why Conor Oberst named the band?
I don't know.
And then second of all, I just got Bright Eyes songs going in my head. 4 winds blowing on the planet of the apes. Yeah. Anyway, Zira meets Charlton Heston.
One more?
Yes.
And one more.
Yeah.
Better Oblivion Community Planet of the Apes. Or
I'm not sure that was worth stopping for, but
it's fine. I wanted to say it, and we can move on. Continue.
Yeah. So Heston gets brought to Ape City. He gets put in cages in this research facility. This is where we meet Zira and Cornelius. And Zira is basically immediately kind of like, oh, this one's special. He like, you can tell that he's trying to communicate and like all that. She's sort of like the reverse Jane Goodall in this movie, where she is interacting with the humans like the Jane Goodall thing with the chimpanzees, where she's like, oh, I'm gonna live amongst them and immerse myself and communicate with them and stuff. It's kind of her vibe. And also she kind of wants to fuck Charlton Heston. And he's open to it. We find out towards the end of the movie that he's like, hey, if you ever want to leave this loser,
join me and Nova off in the Forbidden Zone. We're gonna start a sex colony.
We can have a freaky throuple. One man, one lady, one ape lady.
You know, after I broke down in front of the Statue of Liberty, I realized she's kind of bad, though. So I did rub one out.
Him just jerking off on the fucking beach in front of the Statue of Liberty.
Exposing her armpit, holding up the torch.
Sorry, Lady Liberty, I've been in
me.
space for 2,000 years. I haven't seen that many women. Nova, turn around. I don't want you to get jealous. This is between me and Lady Liberty. Anyway.
That's a lovely shade of green rust that you have on, my dear.
Yeah. So, we get some stuff here, like, towards the beginning, where Dr. Zaius, who's like kind of our main orangutan ruling class guy, we have some stuff with him where he is kind of dressing down Cornelius and Zira a little bit, basically being like, oh, I don't know why you're so interested in studying human intelligence. They're just dumb animals. And then there's some stuff with Cornelius where we learn that basically he is studying it's sort of revealed slowly throughout the movie. Like, we hit it in multiple scenes, but basically, like, he's studying a theory that maybe apes, which is like the most advanced form of life on this planet, of the apes, has possibly like evolved from a lower form of life. And he's like, his hypothesis is that the apes evolved from humans.
Yeah, there's an archaeological site in the Forbidden Zone that he found.
Yeah.
Zaius just wants to exterminate all humans. He thinks they're
stupid animals
and stuff like that.
Yeah. But also he knows more than he lets on, which the movie clues you into pretty early.
Yeah.
Because there's like the scene where Heston is writing in the dirt, and Zaius like erases his writing because he's like covering up the fact that this human is actually intelligent. And then, like, towards the end of the movie, it's revealed he actually knows a lot more than he has been revealing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zira gives Bright Eyes Nova as a potential mate, and of course Nova's totally mute, and they start hanging out. And eventually Taylor is able to get a piece of paper and something to write on, and writes a note to Zira to communicate with her that he's able to speak. And she takes him out of the cage and brings him to her house with Cornelius.
Yeah.
And he writes on more paper and tells the story of where he came from and
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Fort Wayne.
Yeah. And I like that he's writing. So first of all, it's crazy that Taylor doesn't put together way earlier that he is on Earth, because these apes speak English and can read English writing.
I'm also wondering if the audience has put it together.
Right.
Because it's really obvious throughout this movie, I think.
For like a 60s sci-fi thing, though, I'm like, I feel like you might be in the mindset of like, that's like out of convenience, and there's not an in-universe explanation for why we're all just speaking the same language. Because I feel like that was a thing that in like pulp sci-fi,
sure,
like you would just show, like the Flash Gordon would show up to the alien planet and there'd be some alien babe who just looked like a human woman and also just spoke English.
Yeah,
right?
Star Trek and stuff like that too.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I think that's where the audience's head is at in 1968. But it is very funny that in universe, Taylor isn't like, why do you all fucking speak my language? Like, and of course, the reality of it is they speak English because they're on the planet where English was developed. But it's just very funny that like he never connects the dots.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that he's writing on these papers. He's like, I am a fucking guy from another time and planet, and I came here on a spaceship. And Cornelius is like, well, I grant you he's smart. He's clearly intelligent and can write. Like, you've convinced me. But he's also fucking insane, because there's no way that this guy's from outer space. And I'm like, if I was in the presence of a chimpanzee, right? If the situation was reversed and it was a monkey who was writing, I am a traveler from another planet who from 2,000 years ago, and the monkey handed me that paper that it had written that on, I would be like, I 1000% believe you, because it's nuts that a monkey is writing that. So I don't know what Cornelius's problem is. I'm like, no, I would buy that, dog. Like, it seems legit to me.
I want to talk about Cornelius,
Yeah.
played by Roddy McDowall.
Yes.
Roddy McDowall is my favorite performance in this movie.
He's great. He's great. I know I was calling him a cuck earlier, but that is not a negative against his performance.
Cornelius is a cuck.
Yes.
But Roddy McDowall's incredible.
He's amazing.
I think he just knows how to act under the makeup.
Yes.
In a way that some of the other actors in this movie, I think, are struggling with.
I think the three main ones, I think Zira, Zayas, and Cornelius all are acting under the ape makeup incredibly well. But I do agree that like some of the like smaller like bit part ape folks, they're kind of getting lost in the prosthetics. Mm-hmm. And the prosthetics themselves, these rubber masks, they look really good some of the time and look shitty and campy some of the time.
Sure.
And it's a movie from 1968 with not a huge budget. So like when they look shitty and campy, I'm more inclined to find it charming than like distracting or bad. Mm-hmm. But there are definitely moments where they like don't fully work, where you're like, that just looks like a rubber mask.
Yeah, and in later movies, I know the budgets were decreased, so they had to employ just straight up rubber masks a lot of the time.
Yeah.
This was a pretty laborious process to get the prosthetics right this.
You can tell when there's like close-ups on those three main principal apes, mm-hmm. You can't even really see the seams. And I'm like, that must have been hours upon hours in the makeup chair.
Yeah, and they had to bring on like 80 some makeup, I think it was like 80 makeup artists.
That's nuts.
And at the time, it delayed other productions because they just needed so many makeup artists to do the makeup in this movie.
Yeah.
And they were making the prosthetics every day. They were remolding prosthetics basically day and night because you couldn't reuse them.
Yeah,
at the time.
That's crazy.
I agree. I think there's a lot of cases where they look really good and some cases where they don't. When you're facing when the characters are facing the camera head on and talking, you can kind of tell, especially with like the mouth movements and the articulation. When you have like a side profile or it's maybe more of a medium shot, it looks a lot better.
Yeah. But for the time, for 1968, like this is really impressive shit.
Yeah.
At the same time. And this is like pretty early, large scale sci-fi. because this is almost a 2-hour movie. Normally sci-fi had been relegated to like pulp TV, magazines and stuff, and there hadn't been as many like major studio, because this is like 20th Century Fox. It's got big studio backing behind it. So like the fact that this is so early in like the life of cinematic sci-fi, and that they were able to pull something off that even looks this good, I think it's worth celebrating. I think it's really good.
And apes in general in film were just a guy in a suit before this, and it looked really silly and very obvious.
Yeah.
And while I don't think anyone watching this in 68 would have been convinced that they're looking at an ape,
Right.
It works for these characters.
The fact that you can't see the seams on the makeup,
yes,
itself is like better than a lot of the stuff at the time.
And in our 3 principal ape actors, I think the performances really come through, and that's what you need. You still need that human element to the characters to relate to them and understand them.
Yep.
And I think, in particular, Roddy McDowall as Cornelius is doing the best job.
I fully agree.
I also think Kim Hunter as Zira is doing a really good job, too.
I do, too. I also think that Maurice Evans, who plays Dr. Zaius, does a fucking bang-up job in this movie. He is like a little bit of a scenery-chewing villain in this movie, and I think it totally works for me every time. And his performance, because he is kind of going a little bigger and broader with it, his performance really shines through that orangutan makeup. Like, there are times when his eyes are so, like, piercing and, like, so intense that I'm like, you're really getting the performance through all of that shit he's got on his face. By the way, he also played Hutch in Rosemary's Baby this same year. So just big year for Maurice Evans, I guess. He's in the biggest sci-fi and horror movies of 1968. Pretty funny.
So they're gonna cut Taylor's balls off.
Yes, yeah, they're gonna geld him because he can talk, and we can't have that reproducing.
Yeah.
I do love Charlton Heston's reaction to that. He hears that and he's like, "Oh fuck,
yeah,
I gotta get out of here."
So he breaks out and he runs through Ape City.
And he runs through Ape City to avoid having his balls chopped off, and he crashes a gorilla funeral. Where they're talking about how this guy was like the guy who just died, the gorilla who just died. They're like, he was a pillar of the community and a peak example of simian kind, or whatever. Is a gorilla to remember, or whatever. It's so fucking funny.
And then this fucking kid, this fucking G. Willikers ass kid.
I want to drop kick this little fucking gorilla kid so bad.
Look, it's a man.
It's a man. And then, so everybody turns and sees that a man has crashed this funeral, and they all jump up and scream and start running away. And then Charlton Heston, the final indignity for this gorilla who is being laid to rest, Charlton Heston just fucking runs and vaults over his casket. And the casket's like wobbling when he jumps over it. I was losing my shit. This is like one of my favorite moments of the entire movie, is just Charlton Heston ruining this gorilla's funeral and traumatizing his whole family who just lost their loved one. Just imagine if you were at a funeral and a fucking gorilla came in and vaulted over the casket. It rocks. I love this part of the movie so much. It's so fun.
And then he runs into the Creation Museum.
Holy shit. We're talking about
the fucking Ark encounter.
Yes, we're talking about things that are dark and disturbing in this
Yeah.
movie. Fucking Dodge being stuffed with glass eyes as an exhibit in this nature museum. Truly harrowing.
Yes.
Watching it last night, I was like, ooh, I'm like getting chills. Like, I'm like disturbed by this. And this is a movie I have seen before that is rated G. It's really effective. The close-up of his face with just the fucking glass eyes, and you can tell that he's just like fully just stuffed full of stuffing, and it's just preserved skin. I was like, ooh, what a fucking chilling fate for this guy. Yeah, it's great.
There's another sequence when Heston's running through Ape City, and I clocked it for like half a second. I think there's an ape on a crutch that Heston just shoves out of the way, and then the gorillas on horses run him over. Just this poor old man, poor old ape, hobbling his way, gets fucking shoved over by Charlton Heston and
There
then
is
trod
almost,
upon.
bear with me with what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
There is almost, and I know this was first, but I'm using a thing that came later as a comparison point.
Mhm.
Almost a Sam Raimi-esque feeling of just like gleeful chaos in some of these action sequences, like the cornfield, this part where he's running away from trying to get it from them trying to cut his balls off. Even the part in the cage where like the other human attacks Heston, the kinetic camera where it's like kind of moving very sporadically and very agile with the action, and then also just misfortune befalling random people in the background where it's like if you're not focused on it you kind of don't even clock it. It does kind of feel like Raimi to me, and it's probably like the reverse where Raimi probably saw this movie and it was maybe potentially a cinematic influence, but I don't know, there's just something about it that feels kind of Raimi, goofy and funny but also mean in this movie.
Yeah, well, and this sequence ends with the apes surrounding Heston and literally pelting him with vegetables.
It's so fucking funny. It's like simultaneously kind of scary, but also very funny.
And it definitely feels like it's indulging in that Raimi-esque glee of humiliating and torturing your protagonist. Your protagonist,
yeah,
right?
just like putting them through hell for our delight. Yeah.
So this is when he gets captured and his speech impediment has vanished.
Yes, his
and
throat has healed.
And he goes, "Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!" Great line delivery. Yeah. I guess Charlton Heston was actually sick on set that day.
Yeah,
which lent to the gravelly nature of his voice. So
it rocks.
It works.
It's iconic, and it's great. And yeah, all these apes are fucking shocked because they've now heard him speak. So then pretty much the next big thing that happens is they put him on trial, which we were talking about a little bit before.
Before they do that, they put him back in the cage.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to talk about my man, Julius.
Oh, yeah.
Julius is the jailer gorilla.
Yes.
And I love him.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that happen throughout this movie that he does. There's a lot of spraying Taylor with fire hoses.
Yes, which is great.
Taylor's this is when Taylor's doing the whole "it's a madhouse" thing.
A madhouse.
And Julius is spraying him with a fire hose, and he just goes, "Shut up, you freak!" And then later in the movie, he is just smoking Taylor's cigars.
I'm really glad that you brought this up, because I was like, when I saw that fucking monkey smoking a cigar, I sat up a lot straighter on my couch. I was like, what now? We were smoking cigars in space, which I loved, but now a monkey is smoking a cigar. Which I'm sure you can find actual footage of real apes doing that. They've probably given apes cigars, right?
Yeah, probably.
I bet they have.
Well, and
I would like to see some of that footage.
On set, this is the 60s, so people were smoking.
Yeah.
And you couldn't take your makeup off. So there's a bunch of pictures of people just sitting around on their breaks in ape makeup, smoking cigarettes with those holders on the end, so they don't screw up the prosthetics.
That's so funny. That rocks.
But yeah, love Julius.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Shut up, you freak. That's the delivery too.
Yeah. It rocks. Yeah, so they're like spraying Taylor with a fire hose. There is a thing that I wanted to call out in this scene where Julius calls him a freak, which is they move sort of as punishment for Taylor having intelligence and being able to speak and also acting up. They separate him and Nova, who's the human woman who can't speak. Charlton Heston, Taylor just gives her a name.
Yeah.
He's just like, I've decided that this is what you're called.
And he's trying to teach her.
I'm a man and you're a woman who I plan to fuck, but you can't talk, so I need to give you a name. And
back on Earth, I just paid them for the hour and didn't bother to learn their names, but you're special.
You ask me any of their names now, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But
you're my
in my defense, it's been 2,000 years.
You're my
favorite.
All
dead.
You're my favorite kind of woman, the one that can't talk back, the one that can't say no. That's the vibe, though, right?
No, it's 100% the vibe.
Yeah.
What is going on between Taylor and Nova is extremely problematic and gross. Because it's like, not only can she not consent because she can't speak, but also there's an enormous power imbalance because one of them is a guy from Earth 2,000 years in the past when humanity was like evolved and intelligent, and now she's basically an animal.
I don't know if
It's almost, they're the same species, but it's sort of bestiality.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it's less gross for him to have a thing for Dr. Zira. Like, him kissing Zira is, like, weirdly less gross.
Yes, I think
because
so.
even though they're different species, their minds are on a similar level.
It reads to me as a studio note. I don't know if it was or a studio decision
Right.
where it's like, well, he's got to have a romance in this fucking picture.
You gotta put a human babe in here. They can't just be monkey babes.
The humans can't speak? Whatever, we'll hire a model. And Charlton Heston will fuck her. It'll be fine.
Yeah, but I do like, and so I didn't take down the actress's name who played Nova, but I do think she's a wordless performance, and mostly she's given very little to do.
Mm-hmm.
One moment that I did want to call out is when they separate them and put them in separate cages across from each other. There is the moment where Heston is talking to her, and I don't even remember exactly what he's saying. But he's talking to her because he needs somebody to talk to, basically. And he's sort of losing his shit here. He's kind of losing his mind. And he smiles at her at one point, and she smiles back. But it's this, like, kind of weird, imitative, wooden smile.
She's trying to mimic him.
Yes. Good facial performance from that actress in that moment.
Yeah.
Because it really reads as, like, she's not genuinely smiling. She's just like, oh, you're doing this with your face. Like, I'll also do that. And I thought it was really good. And I love, it is such kind of a dark, heartbreaking moment of this movie when Heston kind of slumps down against the bars of his cage after seeing that, and goes, oh, look at that, I taught you to smile, right?
Yeah.
Because he just realizes how irreconcilable the gulf between where he is mentally and where the other humans in this world are mentally is, right? And he's like, oh, I'm truly alone. Like, even the other humans in this world, like, I'm alone amongst them because none of them understand me. And it's really heartbreaking, and I thought it was a really nice little moment that I wanted to call out.
Yeah. Her name is Linda Harrison, and she was a model. This
Yes.
was one of her first acting roles. She didn't have a ton of experience.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think she does a very good job with the wordless performance. Even better than Heston, I think. When Heston has to be wordless for a good portion of this movie, he feels a little awkward to me.
Yeah.
And
mostly he's playing very annoyed and frustrated.
Yeah.
It's kind of one note.
And when he's trying to, like, talk and communicate, I'm like, you could try a little bit harder, you know?
Yeah.
You could try a little bit harder to communicate with these apes.
Yeah. He's not even making sounds. He's just kind of moving his mouth.
Yeah.
Like, he's not even like, or anything. He's just kind of like,
yeah.
Which
but
our listeners won't get what I just did because this is an audio medium. Anyway. Yeah, so then now we're basically at the trial.
yes.
Where they're putting him on trial, even though in their world he's basically an animal. This is like putting a dog on trial. It's very silly. But he's before this council of fucking orangutans, who at one point do the see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil thing.
Yes.
How do you feel about that as a joke in this movie?
I think it's good. I think when they did that, it was just a joke that started on set that they ended up putting into the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the studio didn't like it, but it became one of the more iconic images from the film, and I think it works fine.
I had mixed feelings about it last night. I ended up landing positive, but at first I was like kind of rolling my eyes and like, oh, fuck off. And then I sort of thought about that joke with the thematic stuff that's happening in the courtroom scene. And I was like, okay, no, it's smart and good, actually.
Yeah.
But I sort of had a knee-jerk, like, that's obvious, fuck you, to it. Before thinking about it more and being like, okay, no, actually, in this case, with this dialogue and this thing that we're exploring here, this actually is smart and makes sense.
I was more focused on the various penis-shaped things on the table.
Oh, I didn't notice the penis-shaped thing.
So they have a couple little statues that just look like dildos.
I did not notice the dildos.
They just look like a cock with a head on it. And then there's another, like, very long it's kind of like a tapered I don't know exactly, like a wooden tapered sort of thing that I think Zaius uses as a gavel,
Oh,
or
yeah,
the
his little gavel thing.
or the head judge or
I
whatever
did notice
uses
that
as the
looked
gavel.
like kind of penile.
I feel like
phallic.
yeah, you could stick that into a hole for sure. But the little statues just look like that they're sitting directly in front of them on the table.
I'll have to watch it again and look for the cock statue.
It just looks like cocks.
Heston here has basically told this orangutan council what he already has told Cornelius and Zira, which is, I'm an alien from 300 light years away, 2,000 years ago, and I just so happened to land on a planet that also has people who look like me, but I'm intelligent and can speak because I went to school in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I'm not actually from your planet. And the orangutans, of course, think this is horseshit. One thing that we learn earlier is that the apes think flight is impossible, which I think is really interesting, that they like don't have planes or anything. Like their technology is really interesting, where they have like guns and cameras, but not airplanes. I wonder if they have trains. We never get to see, but there's like no cars. They use like horse and buggy, right? It's just where they're at technologically is very interesting. I think that's like one of the things in this movie that's like not fully explored, and I don't necessarily need it to be explored more, but the hints you get of it are just like very enticing, where I'm like, I wonder what this civilization is actually like day to day.
This is making me think of a Wild West Planet of the Apes, which is very enticing and exciting to me, which, spoiler alert, is partially War for the Planet of the Apes. There is a point in War for the Planet of the Apes where it's like, oh, we're just in the revenge Western portion of the film at this point.
Oh, that's fun.
It's so awesome.
That's your favorite one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I fuck with War hard.
Yeah. That's the one with Woody Harrelson, right?
Yes.
I know I've asked you this before. Okay,
Yes, that's the one with Woody.
Yeah. Where it will truly be a Planet of Apes.
Yeah.
I've only seen
It was in the trailer.
So that's,
Yeah, it was in the trailer.
But yeah, that's fun. I also think weirdly the ape tech, like our sci-fi world here, again was reminding me of Dune, because it doesn't seem like they have like computers. But they also have like advanced science. Like there are people studying like neurology and stuff in this society. So it seems like science has advanced faster than technology in a weird way in ape culture, and it was reminding me of like of Dune, in a way.
Yeah, I think the original novel had a much more advanced ape civilization with full-on big cities and flying cars and all of that stuff. And of course they couldn't do that for budgetary reasons, so they went with a more primitive ape society. But I think it's really interesting, and
I kind of fuck with it even more. Like if it was like, oh, these apes have fucking spaceships and laser guns and stuff, like sure, but I think it's kind of more interesting that it's like, no, they have universities where they're like studying advanced sciences, but also they live in like stone dwellings and like don't have internal combustion or like airplanes or anything. Like it's just kind of fun to have that blend of like advanced thought but like not very advanced technology.
Yeah, I think so too. I also want to mention that Heston has to do this entire trial naked.
Yeah.
Because they're like, seeing a man in clothes is offensive, so let's see his cock.
Dr. Zaius is like, I want to see this man's cock and balls. If I can't look at his wiener and his nut sack, I'll never take anything he says seriously.
The sacred scrolls of the lawgiver say that a man shall not appear before a tribunal with his cock and balls sheathed.
As a matter of fact, someone get a ruler and measure this guy's cock. I'm going to put that into his file.
And afterwards send him to my chambers. I have experiments to perform.
Get that photographer gorilla in here and take a picture of this man's cock. I'm going to put it on my wall in my office. I'm gonna get a plaster cast made of it and add it to the desk of cocks.
Add it to the trial collection of penis-shaped objects.
Your penis shall be my next gavel, Bright Eyes.
This is where a lot of the Twilight Zone
Yeah.
of this movie comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about things like science versus religion,
Yep.
which is a part of this movie. Of course, there's the whole racial aspect of this as well.
Mhm.
And it's really elegantly written and very well done.
Yeah, another piece of kind of racial politics and like civil rights era stuff coming through here, like separate from Heston's character, is there is a racial divide in ape society in this movie, which I think is really interesting. That, like we've already alluded to it, the orangutans are exclusively the upper class, and the chimpanzees exclusively occupy a class that's below them. The gorillas too, right? And there's a line in this scene, the trial scene, that feels very civil. Like this is clearly a civil rights era film.
Yeah.
Where I think it's Dr. Zayas is cross-examining Taylor. And he's basically like, oh, like, obviously you're unintelligent because you don't know the second tenet of ape law or whatever. And then he asks Taylor, why were all apes created equal? Expecting, well, if you're really intelligent, you'll know the standard ape political doctrine answer to this. And Taylor's response is, well, it seems to me that some apes are a little bit more equal than others.
Yes.
Because he's noticed that the orangutans have all the power and the chimpanzees and gorillas have to basically just do whatever they say. And I'm like, that feels very pointed for a movie that came out at the height of the civil rights movement. It feels like that's Rod Serling, who was Rod Serling was a known proponent of the civil rights movement. He was a known advocate for racial equality. Feels very much like a Rod Serling thing, basically being like, yeah, I'm pointing the finger back at America.
Yeah, I think so.
In a big way. And I like that that's called out here.
Yeah. Part of Taylor's story is that there's other men that came here with him. So they go to find Landon, who was captured as well, and discover that Landon's been lobotomized.
Yes.
So Landon can't speak.
Another really horrific scene in
Yeah,
this movie.
yeah.
The same as Dodge in the Nature Museum. I'm like, this is really fucked up that they just like cut this guy's brain open and took his humanity out, and now he's basically just a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Charlton Heston seems sort of broken up about it, but not very, which tracks because he fucking hated Landon anyway.
Oh, Landon, you stupid piece of shit. Of course you'd get yourself lobotomized.
I would have expected nothing less from you, you stupid piece of shit.
After they conclude the trial, Zayas talks.
They probably didn't have to go very deep to get your brains out of there, eh, Landon?
They scooped them out with a spoon. That's all that was left in there.
Used a teaspoon for you.
The trial ends, and Zayas talks to Taylor privately, and is fully just like, so we're gonna cut off your fucking dick and play around in your brain, or
tell us where the other
ones are.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Because he does believe that Taylor is intelligent.
Yeah.
Which in the trial he was like fully saying he did not.
Because it would be heresy.
It's heresy. That's a thing that we haven't touched on very much.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's a whole religious element to this, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah, they're a theocratic government.
Fully. Yeah. And they're basically like, Cornelius can't talk about his theory of evolution because it's heresy. There's the whole thing about how like to say a man is capable of being intelligent is heresy because there's all this stuff in their scriptures about how men are stupid and bad and wicked, basically. So I really like that whole element to that. I like the whole like religious element to this whole thing. But he basically couldn't admit it in the trial room because it would be heresy. But to Taylor, he can be like, no, I acknowledge you're intelligent. I just don't believe you came from outer space. You're a mutant. Where are the other mutants?
Yeah, and then this entire trial is rigged against him, basically. And of course, Taylor reacts to this in this private moment with Zayas where he talks about how your whole civilization's upside down. And Zayas delivers another very pointed line, I think, about the civil rights movement, about class, that I think comes from that Rod Serling perspective on this film, where he says, of course you would say that because you occupy its lowest position and
Yep.
deservedly so.
Yep, I made note of that one too, where
Yeah.
I was like, that, if anything in this movie is a Rod Serling line, that is my boy Rod Serling in this movie. Because I know, like, he did some work on the script, but then it was, like,
Yeah.
fucked with by some other people.
Yeah.
But, like, shit like that, I'm like, that's Rod.
Yeah.
And it really hit for me. I really liked it. And Maurice Evans delivering it is also fantastic.
Mhm.
I really like the scene between the two of them. It's one of the highlights of the movie for me.
Yeah, I would agree too. And I love the trial sequence too because
Yeah.
there is so much theme packed into those into that dialogue.
Yeah, this is sort of like a kind of quiet, patient, contemplative sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
There's a couple action sequences, but a lot of this is just people talking about pretty heady concepts. And I kind of like that. Like, I kind of fuck with that.
And the other movies in this iteration of the franchise, these original 5, they all have social and political themes to them. They are much more unsubtle and on the nose with them.
Yeah.
And also a little bit more action driven and silly in places. They all do their own thing, and I do appreciate all of them. But here, everything feels a lot more subtle and elegant and well written, and also enjoyable. Like, I think this movie functions as an enjoyable sci-fi adventure, and also a really well written and thoughtful piece of commentary.
Yeah. Agreed. Anyway. Oh, I like in this scene that, by the way, that Zaius calls him Taylor because he's dropped all the pretenses and he just calls him Taylor instead of Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
And I really like the genuine appreciation that Taylor shows for that, because he's like, fucking thank God someone's finally calling me by my name instead of this like pet name that they gave me. Which I like that moment too. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So he gets thrown back into the cage and gets rescued by Zira's nephew,
Fucking
Lucius.
I'm sorry. Fucking annoying ass nephew
Yes.
Lucius. This is probably my least favorite character in this movie.
My least favorite character is the kid that goes,
yeah.
"It's a man!" Lucius is probably taking up that number 2 spot.
I do not care for Lucius. I don't think we need it. You could have very easily just had Cornelius rescue him here, and it would have accomplished the same thing. Or maybe because Cornelius and Zira are on trial or whatever, like, introduce another adult chimpanzee. It didn't need to be this fucking teen snot. Like, there's something about him being like, I'm a teenager chimpanzee. Yeah. And I know they're trying to say something about like the youth movement that was going on in the 60s, when literally later
that piece of commentary is very much shoehorned into this. I think,
yeah.
compared to everything else.
Yeah. Which is why I'm like, we didn't need this character. We didn't need that piece of commentary in this movie in addition to all the other stuff it's saying.
Yeah.
Lucius is, I find him quite obnoxious.
And they're going to leave without Nova.
Yeah.
But Heston is like, I want her. And that's
No.
exactly how it says.
I'm bringing the woman.
I'm bringing that hot piece of ass.
You can pull that hot piece of ass out of my cold, dead hands.
You're going to have to pull me out of that pussy like Excalibur. I haven't been laid in 2,000 years.
We've been spooning a lot earlier, but she hasn't let me get past second base.
I'm gonna come like Niagara Falls in that pussy.
You know what 2,000 years in a cryo chamber does?
Sorry, the podmaster just walked by as I was doing that and gave us a very judgmental look, so it threw me off. She thinks our impression's pretty good, though. I don't remember what the end of that was going to be, so I'm just going to move on.
Yeah. They sneak him out, and of course, Zaius and Cornelius have also been banished for heresy. And I also love Heston going like, "Do you have any guns?" And they're like, "Yeah, we have some, but we don't need them." He's like, "I want one."
Yeah. I also did make special note of that, just due to where the rest of Charlton Heston's life would
Yes.
go after this movie. I was like, Yes, there's that.
It's
that guy.
my right as a citizen of the planet of the apes.
He was fighting for the civil rights movement at the time this movie was made, but you can see how much he wants that gun. Yeah.
So now it's Oregon Trail with apes. They get a wagon.
Yes.
They take off across the desert.
And we see some more beautiful Lake Powell, some more beautiful Glen Canyon. Lots of really good landscape photography here. We've been inside in some of these admittedly very beautiful and amazing locations that they built in Ape City for this film. But getting back out into these landscapes happens, I think, at the right point of the movie where it's like we open it up again and it feels bigger again.
Yeah, and
because we've been spending a lot of time in rooms.
And Ape City itself, I think, was built on like the studio backlot or built in Los Angeles somewhere.
Yeah.
So getting out into nature again really does this movie a great benefit, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Because it was if you hadn't done this at this point in the movie, it would start feeling a little claustrophobic, maybe a little bit TV setty. And getting it back out into the open is the right move. And
they make it to the coast where the archaeological dig site is in the Forbidden Zone. And Heston shaves off his beard. And there's a joke where Lucius is talking to him, I think, and he's like, "Back in my time, only the young people wore beards. Those goddamn fucking hippies."
That is very much the tenor of it.
Yeah.
Which I imagine was like, that might have been scripted, but it could just as easily have been a Heston ad-lib, where he's like, "Can I get in a dig against those goddamn hippies?"
So the gorillas and Dr. Zaius catch up with him at the coast.
Yeah.
And Heston just immediately starts shooting.
Yes. Yeah. So I started blasting.
Yeah.
He does not give a shit. They gave him a gun and he's gonna use it.
I'm exercising my constitutional right to self-defense.
The Forbidden Zone has stand your ground laws.
Technically, this archaeological dig proves that humans were here first, so you're on my property.
So they're like shooting, and eventually, like, they take Zaius prisoner here.
He orders the gorillas to back off,
Yeah.
and like Zaius and them go into the dig site.
Yes.
In this cave.
And David,
Yeah.
they find a doll
Mhm.
at this dig site that somehow, after 2,000 years, 2,000 years, still says "Mama."
At the very least, I would expect it to sound like when you find one of those talking greeting cards in your drawer that you got 5
it's
years
just
ago.
Like, happy birthday.
It just sounds like you've opened up a fucking portal to hell.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Cenobite is singing happy birthday to you.
But it's insane that this doll still works.
This is in a movie where apes have supplanted humanity as the most intelligent species on planet Earth after some kind of nuclear war. This doll continuing to work after 2,000 years is the least believable thing in this film. I was like, ain't no way. Absolutely not. It's fine. It does what it needs to do as a plot device.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's bullshit.
I made note of that as well. They find artifacts in here as well with like there's like glasses and false teeth and a skeleton.
And I love that Taylor still hasn't put it together.
Right.
Where he's like, wow, people on this world lived a lot like people on the Earth that I'm from.
Seems rather like me. But that doesn't make sense.
Obviously, I'm 300 light years away. The computer said so. That couldn't possibly be a mistake, even though I just found this guy's dentures and eyeglasses and a bottle that says Coca-Cola. And also, everyone here speaks and writes the English language. And I'm pretty sure I just saw Lake Powell.
Cornelius' whole theory is that apes evolved from humans because he finds the human skeleton in a layer of rock below the ape skeletons. And of course, this is heresy and such and such and such. And then Lucius is just shooting that fucking gun off outside.
Lucius has decided that we're all gonna go to hell tonight, I think. he's basically just like, well, the ceasefire happened when they took Zeus prisoner and went in there, but now we don't know what's happening in there, so I better fucking murk these guerrillas. Yeah, no clue what's happening.
But Heston plays right along with it, and they take Zeus hostage again.
Yeah. I love them tying him.
Yeah.
Heston tying him to this fucking like piece of driftwood on the beach. It's just like so like undignified and like so humiliating, which I think Zira even said. She's like, don't tie him up like that. It's humiliating. And it's like, he fucking deserves it. Like, you hate Zeus at this point because he's this fucking theocratic, two-faced shitheel politician. And it's great to see him like fucking tied up with like his arms behind his back on this piece of driftwood.
Yeah, and Zeus reveals that he knew about this the whole time. He knew about the extinct race of man, and I've always known about your coming, and I've dread it. And then Heston gives his whole like, yeah, because we're men and we're fucking better than you piece of shit speech.
Yeah, which Zeus has been talking about previously. I think he brings it up at the trial and a couple other times, how he's not afraid of man because of man's superiority. He's afraid of man because the sacred scrolls that are like the biblical texts for this ape civilization specifically note that man is dangerous. And I think maybe here is where he says,
yes, he
like,
quotes one.
Yeah, he's like, he'll make a desert of his home and a desert of your home. And so it's like there's stuff in these ape religious texts which date back to like ancient ape civilization, it seems like, where it's like, watch out for men because they will fuck your shit up. And I love that that's another message of this movie. I think there's a very strong environmentalist message to this movie as well.
Yeah.
Where it's basically like, no, yeah, like that is what we do to the animals on our planet. And if the apes suddenly got smarter than us tomorrow, right, and took shit over, they would rightfully be sort of pissed off about the way that we've treated their habitat and their environment, So I kind of like that that's also kind of sprinkled in here.
Well,
as well.
And Heston's performance is definitely giving like, yeah, that might have been some men, but that's not us. We're great and we kick ass and I have a huge cock and I'm the hero of the movie. And again, I don't know how much of that is intentional on Heston's part.
Yeah.
Or if, he just doesn't know what movie he's actually in.
But it does read to me as an intentional choice, if not on Heston's part, then at least on the movie's part, for Taylor to sort of be blind to his own reflection of the society that he's trying to distance himself from.
Yeah.
Right? Where he's basically like, oh, well, back on Earth, man turned against his brother and like treated each other shitty and like kept their some people in poverty while other people benefited off the backs of those people, and I'm not like that. But then as soon as he's in this society, he's basically like, I'm better than you, fuck you. Right? And I'm like, no, like I think it's important for the movie that he doesn't realize until the very end that he is the same thing as the men that he is trying to distance himself from, and say like, oh, I came out in the universe to find something better than them, because in his heart of hearts he thinks he's better than them.
Yes.
Right? He thinks he's better than humanity, and then he finds these apes and he's like, well, I'm better than you too.
Yeah, well, and again, I think that's very pointed why like the first time he comes across primitive man, he's like, let's just fucking enslave them all and become king.
Yeah. And it's like he doesn't realize that he's the type of man that made Earth everything that he hated that it was, And I do think that's intentional on the movie's part to never really let him realize that until he comes face to face with the Statue of Liberty here in a second.
Right.
Yeah.
So he demands food, water, ammunition, and a horse.
And then he takes his babe and his gun.
Takes his babe and rides off
off along the beach. And as much as Taylor is sort of like, Taylor being a cool action guy is sort of a thing that you're supposed to like critique and apply like various lenses to. Charlton Heston, the shots of Charlton Heston riding across the beach on this horse with this babe and this huge gun, I was sort of like,
he looks really fucking awesome.
I know the point is that he's not awesome, and this type of guy is like the type of guy who has made Earth bad and started nuclear war or whatever, but also does look pretty cool.
It looks like he's coming out of like a tobacco commercial. Like
Yeah.
Philip Morris or something. Tobacco commercial.
Yeah, fucking Jack
He's the
Daniels
Marlboro
ad.
Man of the future.
Yeah.
We do check in with Zayas really quickly, like literally 10 seconds after Taylor rides off, and he looks over at Zira and Cornelius and he goes, "Untie me, you fucking dicks!"
I also love that and he's also going to make them stand trial for heresy.
Yeah. Immediately afterwards, he's like, "Oh, okay, cool, thanks. By the way,
Yeah.
we're gonna put you on trial for heresy."
And they're like, wait, but like what we saw in the archaeological dig site
Yeah.
proves our theory right, so you can't try us as heretics. And he's like, on the contrary, I'm gonna blow that shit the fuck up, so it's your word against mine.
Who's gonna believe a chimpanzee against an orangutan?
Is sort of the vibe of it. And they just blow this shit up and cover the evidence.
Mhm.
I love that there's a government cover-up
Yeah.
in Planet of the Apes.
I like that too.
It's cool. Yeah.
And then Heston rides off into the sunset with his
babe and his gun.
his babe and his gun, his mute, non-consenting,
Yes.
unintelligent hot lady that you found.
We don't know what age she is either. We're not even gonna open that can of worms.
No, we are not.
He definitely hasn't asked because she can't tell him. He's like,
Well, she can't tell me if she's under 18, so I guess I'll just have to assume.
And the fake beard, after the fake beard's off, you really can tell how old Heston looks in this.
yeah. He
I
does
mean,
look significantly older than Nova.
Significantly,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
There's the lines on that face. I've
Yeah.
seen things.
Yeah.
And then the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They ride up to the Statue of Liberty, and it's a great ending. Like
Yeah, it's a good ending.
I know it's been parodied, and I know it's been it's so in the zeitgeist that it's hard to like divorce its reputation from this moment. But it's a really good ending for this movie, where he sees the Statue of Liberty, he's sort of in shock, and then he gets down on his knees and he does the "God damn you all to hell."
Yeah.
And
I think the writing is a little. I don't think we needed a ton of dialogue here.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "I'm home, I'm back," and then the
Yeah,
"damn you all
yeah,
to
yeah.
hell." It's a little.
maybe overwritten, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's a little telling instead of showing. But I think his performance is good.
And I really love that this is. I love that it's just cut to credits immediately after this, because this does finish the arc of the movie and the character. Because the first thing that we see is Heston on the spaceship basically being like, well, we've been away in deep space for 70 years. I hope that when we get back, things are, or 700 years or whatever
Right.
it is. He's like, well, I hope when we get back, things are a little different, and man isn't fighting wars over stupid shit anymore, and like we've learned to bring people out of poverty. And he's like,
But at least I can still get a goddamn firearm.
I
I
swear
hope open carry laws and the assault weapons ban.
I swear to God, if I come back to Earth and I'm not allowed to buy a gun at a corner store, I'm gonna lose my shit.
Anyway, so, but I love that it comes full circle, where like his philosophizing at the beginning,
Yeah.
and him being sort of hopeful about the trajectory that humanity is going to take is unambiguously answered. His question is unambiguously answered at the end of the movie in a very dark and cynical and negative way.
Mhm.
It's basically just like him. He's like, I have so much hope for the human race at the beginning. And at the end, it's like, that hope was misplaced. Humanity fucked the planet. And now it's run by apes. Credits.
And the apes have taken on all of the same negative
Yes.
characteristics that we have.
Yes. History, the cycle is repeating itself, right?
Mhm.
And it's just like, it's so dark. It's so depressing. It's so Twilight Zone. And it really leaves you thinking about a lot.
Yeah.
And like it's a banger ending. It's really hard to overstate how much it deserves kind of the reputation that it has built over the years.
Mhm.
Because it's like it really fucking hits.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good ending, and
Yeah.
I think it ties up so many of the themes of this film really, really well. And I think this will lead into our verdicts, I guess. I think to people who think that they know everything about Planet of the Apes just because they know about this ending, I think there's a lot more to unpack here beyond just that ending.
Yeah.
So, Justice,
Yes.
is Planet of the Apes the greatest movie ever made?
Planet of the Apes from 1968. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't put down my verdict in my notes like I sometimes do because I was still kind of mulling this one over.
Yeah.
I had a really good time revisiting it. Hadn't seen it in a long time. Was really blown away by how beautiful this thing is. Just the cinematography, the landscape photography. It's shot incredibly well. Mostly really great performances. Some of the prosthetics stuff doesn't hold up, but sometimes it does, right? So the visuals kind of carry this thing a long way for me. A lot of thematic richness, a very deep film that you can like analyze endlessly. I love how mean and cynical and dark it is. There's not much for me to point to in terms of weaknesses, other than at times I think this thing maybe slumps a little bit in the middle. I think it does lose some of its momentum and slows down a little bit too much towards the second act. But I also think it like really comes back with force in the third act and ends with a bang. So like that's not even that much of a problem. Truly did not expect to say this about this movie. Had not seen it in like 2 decades probably. But I kind of think Planet of the Apes 1968 is the greatest movie ever made, because as I was watching it, I was like sort of in awe of this as a piece of science fiction. And it separated itself on this viewing from its reputation and its standing in sci-fi history. And I was just able to appreciate it as a movie on its own merits. And on that level, I was like, fuck, this thing is really well put together. Like they really knocked this out of the park.
Yeah.
So like a surprising yes from me on this one. Didn't expect to say that, but like that's how I felt about it. David is
Justice.
Yes, that's my name. Is Planet of the Apes the greatest movie ever made?
This is my second go around with this thing. And like you, I really appreciate a lot of this. I think it's really well shot, and most of the performances I'm really impressed with. I know I was maybe dogging on Heston a lot in this movie, in this episode, deservedly so. I think he does a decent job. We didn't talk about him a ton, but can't say enough good things about Roddy McDowall as Cornelius. And he continues to be a part of this franchise, and is great. And
he's like the only one who came back, right?
Kim Hunter comes back, and then and then in the later ones he's playing Cornelius's son, because we go back in time. Right.
Heston never came back. I'm assuming.
No, Heston came back for the second one.
Oh, I forgot that.
Heston's in Beneath for like 10 minutes.
I forgot that.
Yeah. But anyway, Kim Hunter's also really good. Maurice Evans is really good. A lot of great, powerful imagery in this movie. Disturbing imagery for a G-rated film. And a really interesting movie to think about and unpack all of its themes. And a great example of science fiction that I think, like I've probably said earlier, is has a lot to say and is also just an entertaining, fun adventure romp. And had a really good time with it. I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made.
That's fair. That's what I expected to say.
I think it's there's a lot in here that works for me. I think there's a little bit of that slump in the middle that you were talking about, and the stuff with Nova just doesn't work at all.
That's true.
Other than her performance for me.
Yeah.
And it's a product of its time in some ways. With the some of the makeup, and even as interesting as these themes are, there are certain aspects to them that don't quite work for me in a modern context.
We didn't actually talk about it, but there is a point at which Charlton Heston straight up tells Lucius, "Don't trust anyone over 30."
Yeah.
He actually says that in this movie, which is fucking nuts. And you alluded to it being like a okay, we really get it. You're really hitting us over the head with this. That moment is an example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those aren't necessarily negatives against the movie, but I just think this movie doesn't fully hit for me the way that a classic greatest movie ever made would. But if someone told me that Planet of the Apes was their favorite sci-fi film, or even their favorite film of all time, I couldn't necessarily disagree with that. And it's great. It's one of my favorite movies of this franchise. The ones that I like more than it are in the new trilogy, but I think that's just because I have an attachment to those films. And Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is, of course, coming out. Looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I gotta get on some of those newer Apes movies so that eventually I can see Kingdom. Probably not in theaters because I have too many movies to catch up on.
There are too many movies.
Yeah, but I hope people enjoy their new Apes movie, and hopefully I will one day be able to enjoy it because I enjoy the one that started it all. So I should really get deeper into this franchise.
Yep. Next week we're talking about Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yes, our first Francis Ford Coppola film.
One I've never seen.
I have seen it. I recommended this one because I was like, what's a movie that's weird and wild and is going to be fun to talk about because it's batshit insane?
This is our first Cage too, right?
It is our first Cage. Nicolas Cage will be appearing for the very first time on The Greatest Movie Ever Made, which I'm excited for. I'm excited for the director of The Godfather to premiere on this podcast with his magical realism romantic comedy fantasy film Peggy Sue Got Married.
I know precisely nothing about it other than Coppola directed it, Nick Cage is in it, and presumably a woman named Peggy Sue gets married in it.
Yes, Peggy Sue does indeed get married. And to learn more, join us next week for our discussion on Francis Ford Coppola's Peggy Sue Got Married.
Starring the indomitable Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
In the meantime, spread the word about the show. Tell your friends. Leave us a review. Spread us around social media like a plague. And we appreciate your support. We love you so much. Take care of yourselves. Love one another. Tip your bartenders. I probably said that before.
You probably have. I think you have.
And until we see you next time, as always, later, dipshits!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.